Comes from the pocket. Now, did you hear this morning that yesterday there was a smell in the Jarvis Dundas area, and that's very close by? There's on the news, yeah, there's a disturbing smell. And so on...
What was a disturbing smell over there?
They found out that a man had sheep carcasses in his warehouse. About a dozen of them.
That's just weird.
And he said that he was paid to dispose of them. Who doesn't?
Wow. Well, nobody's going to do it for free.
So people were complaining of the scent, so thank God it wasn't PodCamp that they're complaining about. That's that scent. All right, so we're going to get started in just a sec. We're going to talk about why, or will, podcasting kill radio. Will radio kill podcasting? Podcasting kill radio. Make sure I get that right.
Okay. Crap.
And a good thing about PodCamp is that sometimes people will join a panel at the last minute. So I will quickly introduce our panelists, and then away we go. I'm excited too. And don't forget that this is also a very interactive session. I may ask the questions just to start us off, but even though I like the sound of my own voice, I would invite you to ask questions as well. So I'm not speaking for the whole time. Are you ready?
Good. Fuck the house.
Rock in.
Let's go.
Do I need this microphone?
Your audio's okay? Yeah. Great. Thank you.
Let's kick the diesel wheel.
You just let to embarrass us.
No.
All right.
Just fuck them.
I don't think I need this microphone, do I?
Just use it for later. Just leave it for you.
I will leave it in front of me, says Jay. Was that Jay?
That was Jay.
All right, so my name is Leesa Barnes, and that hasn't changed since yesterday. And I'd like to introduce our panel very quickly. To my far left is Tim Posgate? Posgate. He's a podcaster at Canadian Jazz Life and a jazz recording artist. And he runs his own label called Guildwood Records. So let's actually hold your applause till I introduce all our panel. And next to Tim is Jay Moonah. Does he need an introduction?
Move on.
Jay Moonah is the founder of one of my favorite groups, Uncle Seth. And you're now my favorite group because of that one song.
Which one?
To Be an Angel.
Oh, that's right, because you used it in your...
Yeah, I love that song. Love that song. He's also one of the organizers behind PodCamp Toronto. Next to him, the only other female on this panel is Heather Vale. Heather is a former news anchor and host of a couple of podcasts, one called Success Unwrapped Radio, as well as Internet Marketing Unwrapped. And later on today, she's going to talk about the 7 ways to monetize your podcast. So if you want to learn...
9.
Just became 9.
9 ways.
By the
9 ways.
By the time the session comes around, it'll be 14.
Because an extra 2 now we're in.
All right, now beside Heather are two... You guys are crazy. The two of you.
We love it.
Yes, you guys are crazy, and I love it. Steve Snowball Saylor. Okay, yeah, that's you. And Mike the Birdman Dodd of This Week in Geek. So welcome to you both.
Thank you.
And lastly, one of my favorite guys, but I think I tell that to everyone, but he is one of my favorites. Bill Sweetman, who's the Vice President of Internet Strategy at MacLaren, MRM, and host of Martini, one of our sponsors. So give it up for our panelists. So, first question. Is podcasting like radio?
Is it like radio? Was the question?
Yes.
Is it like radio?
Yeah.
Well,
Yes and no.
yeah. Do you want to start? You should start.
Let the lady start.
It is like radio in the sense that it's an audio show and it's targeted to a certain audience, but it's not like radio in the fact that it's not as immediate as radio. It's not as mass market as radio for the most part. Podcasts tend to find a better audience when they're more niche focused, and usually less advertising on podcasts. Although, if you attend my session later, you might walk away doing something
for the
different.
session. Anyone else want to add?
Well, Liz Jeffrey isn't here. I know she's around here today. Because I'm gonna paraphrase McLuhan, but I wouldn't want to do it if she's in the room because she's the big McLuhan expert. My thing, and one of the reasons I want to be on this panel is because there's that McLuhan statement, the medium is a message, but a lot of people misunderstand that. What it really means, it's a sort of short, sweet way of saying the medium impacts the message. It's a different message that you have to use in a particular medium to have the same message. So branding, for instance, is different in different media. A logo, just taking a logo that's on paper and putting it on TV doesn't have the same branding impact. And obviously you can't do that with audio. Podcasting is like radio, as you say, because it's an audio format. But the way that people engage with it, the kind of conversation that they have with it is different because of the interactivity, because of the things that surround it, because of the RSS, and because of the ability to get it on demand. So technically, in some ways it's like radio. But every media, whether it's radio or television or blogging or podcasting, is a communication, and that communication impacts your message in such a way that you have to think differently about your message when you're using different media. And that's an easy thing to say. It's a difficult thing for a lot of people to do. So I think that's the big thing that I always think about when I'm moving between media is what's the thing in this media that's going to forward my conversation, forward my objectives, forward my relationships that makes sense in this media. Some things make sense in different media, some things don't. And I think that's the biggest thing for me.
Tim?
Well, I think the thing that I thought the main difference was the live and recorded element. And I listened to my pal Ron Gaskin's show Wednesdays, broadcast right here from CKLN Wednesday mornings, and I love it because it's live. He's looking out the window, he's telling me about the weather, he's telling me about how he feels in the moment. But then last night, I discovered, you'll probably laugh that I just discovered it, but Talk Shoot, yeah, which is live podcasting. So that messed the whole thing up for me, in the last 15 hours. That's what I thought the main difference was.
But is it a live podcast or is it just streaming web audio?
No, you can get them live. Right.
They do both. Yeah.
But if it's live, is it a podcast? That's your question.
Well,
Because they
a
are live.
podcast is an RSS feed. So if it doesn't
Exactly.
have an RSS feed, is it a podcast?
Exactly. So
No, I would say it's streaming
it
web
becomes
audio.
a podcast 5 minutes later.
Right, 5 minutes later. That 5 minutes makes the difference.
Right, okay.
Bill?
I think one of the key differences between radio and podcasting is there's this sense of, in podcasting, a sense of a relationship with the personality of the podcaster. You don't generally get that in radio. A lot of radio is not really personality based.
I don't agree. I do.
I disagree on that one.
When you meet, when I met Andy Barry for the first time, it was like he was my friend. And I never met the man, but I'd listen to him every day for
That's a couple of
5 years.
hours during a 24-hour period of radio. So he and other radio personalities are an exception, but most of radio in a 24-hour period, it's not the personality that people are tuning in for.
See, I think that's the thing that's going to keep people at radio. That's why radio is going to
the
exist.
personalities which drive shows.
Speaking of my friend here again, when someone else fills in for his show, I tune in and he's not there. I actually don't listen. For me, it's all about the people.
And what happened with Jack FM? They got rid of all their DJs. We don't need them anymore. Oh, oops, let's bring some people back.
But just to be the contrary, if you look at satellite radio where there's almost no personality, hugely popular. I'm not saying it's good or bad, but what I've noticed about podcasting is it's very, very closely tuned to the personality of the podcaster.
But satellite radio is mostly, and should be, mostly because of the sonic quality, about music. It's essentially it's piped in music, right?
Yeah.
And Jack sort of tried to be that, but it didn't work for their media. And that kind of goes back to my point, which is, Jack can't be what satellite is because it's not the same medium. And even satellite radio, you think the delivery method shouldn't make that much difference, but it does because the quality impacts what is best served by that media. Well, satellite's rocking for music because it sounds so great. But
it's not so good for other stuff.
Exactly right. So and whereas FM radio sounds shitty compared to other things, like compared to CDs and satellite and other things. So it can't just be about the music, and that's what Jack tried to do wrong.
We have a question here from Bob.
Yeah,
Or
I
a
guess
comment?
a question or a comment. I have sort of a little finger dipped into the radio world because I do a column for a CBC Radio show on public relations, and I've sort of been in touch with radio throughout almost all of my career. And I think you've got to split radio, the term, up into almost, for the lack of a better, and I'm just thinking this out now, at least 3 streams. There's, in Canada at least, you've got the public broadcaster. then you've got commercial music radio, and then you've got news talk. And I think the three are very different. And to me, the one that's probably got the best chance of surviving is the public affairs broadcaster, because they have the resources to actually engage in podcasting, and they're trying to figure out how to do that now. And I think they're gonna get there. The music, radio music, forget it. It's dead, and it's not podcasting's fault. It's the utter creative bankruptcy of music radio. And news talk will probably always have a place.
Yeah. And I spoke to, along those lines, I spoke to the director of CBC Radio 3 and interviewed him for my podcast. And when I asked him how many people are working behind the scenes in terms of the podcast, he said 20. And although most of them are doing other things at CBC Radio 3 or CBC Radio, still to hear that many numbers, not many people can afford that.
But Radio 3 has a big infrastructure, and I think CBC to me is a really interesting. Part of the reason I want to be on this too is because one of the things, and just a sweet, tiny little short bit of background. When I started working in this building, one of the first jobs that I had, one of my first web projects was actually a broadcast history project, and it's still in mine. It was funded by something called the Canadian Communications Foundation, and they wanted to do a history project on private radio. So we put a bunch of archival stuff on the web. One of the things that struck me was, you can go back to the 20s, 30s, and then see the evolution in TV in the 50s and 60s. And their stuff was around the public, or the private broadcasters, but also, parallel to that was the evolution of CBC. It's interesting to see when CBC and when others first started to take their steps into TV, it looked like it was radio with pictures, because they didn't really know how to do it. And I think podcasting, initially with CBC is radio with an RSS feed, because that's what they know how to do. But they've already actually, I think, done a really good job. And Radio 3, I know those Radio 3 guys a little bit. They do a really good job because they're always thinking out of the box. They're trying to do different things. They do some things that haven't worked because some of their sites, some of their wacky flash sites and stuff like that are kind of insane. But they try things out of the box, and I think that's really interesting. But the point is this, that they have a bunch of people in there innovating and playing. You can do that with one person. You just need to pick your spot. I mean, they're doing a lot of things. So there's 20 people working on the podcast, but those 20 people are also working on Music Canada, they're working on Radio.ca, they're working on...
And satellite radio as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
A question from the audience?
Yeah, hi, Mark from Rock and Roll Report. I actually do radio on community radio, and then I'm looking at doing a podcast. I think what radio has going for it, especially non-commercial, listener-supported radio, public radio perhaps, is they're willing to embrace all the technologies and basically kind of spread out their mode of distribution. I mean, there's a radio station I listen to in the States called WFMU. They're completely freeform. They have podcasts. You can get this on your little pocket PC. You can listen to it on your cell phone. You can listen to it over the FM dial. You can listen to it on the internet. They're looking at, basically, they embrace all these technologies and they use it, they kind of use them the same, but they use them differently to get their message out. And they're willing to do that. Commercial radio doesn't seem to be willing to do that as much.
There's lots of commercial radio stations that podcast the morning show or podcast the news. You can get it later. If you go surfing on the web, and a lot of them too also have listen to it streaming live. So those technologies are being used in commercial radio as well.
Yeah, I think
more and more.
Our station at Niagara College is actually starting to take podcasting rather seriously. When we came to this conference, there was serious talk of developing it into the curriculum, perhaps, because podcasting is becoming so big that
I think ultimately they have to do that.
Yeah.
I think any television station or radio station that's not ready for the convergence of everything, like where the lines are completely erased, they're in big trouble, whether you're talking the top or community radio. Like everything is becoming the same, and there will be slight differences, and most of us know that, but I don't think the people on the other side know that.
There's also, and just to throw this sort of a wrench in the works, is there is a reason too that commercial radio hasn't embraced podcasting to the degree that they would like to. And I've actually talked to people in commercial radio. I talked to Alan Cross at The Edge and other people like that. One of the reasons is copyright issues. They can't include most of the music that they play ordinarily day to day because they don't have the rights for it. So that throws a wrench in things. Radio 3 gets around that by pre-clearing everything through this great site that they have called Music Canada. So they can play any music that's cleared because anybody who signs up to Music Canada by default clears their waiver. But commercial radio, part of their struggle has been we're not allowed to play this stuff. We're going to get sued.
So the question is then, even though not a lot of old media has embraced podcasting. There are a few stations that are. So with radio now, podcasting, is that a threat to podcasting in general? Bill?
I think it definitely is. Well, it is. If you think about it, technically, the audience for radio and the audience for podcasting, they're technically the same. Yes, the way they may have listened to it is different, but the only difference being with that audience is that with podcasts, you feel more, you have a more personal connection with the person, and you're able to contact them, and it's more interactive. Whereas radio, if it's just streamed through a podcast, you get no interactivity. You're basically just listening to the radio, except it's on an RSS feed.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing I can see.
The other huge difference, though, right now between radio and podcasting is, I'm just wearing the advertising agency hat, is the reach of podcasting is minuscule compared to radio right now. And I wish that wasn't the case, but that's why advertisers... Oh,
well,
absolutely.
it's a bigger reach geographically, because anyone in the world can listen to your podcast.
Right.
Not anyone in the world can listen to your terrestrial radio station.
Which is actually a problem from a marketing standpoint,
Yeah,
because
it
you're branding Rogers and you got a bunch of American listeners, you don't give a crap, right?
Advertisers want that
Go to the
geographical
local
target.
media, what's that?
Yeah, right.
Unfortunately, with our station that we work for, the college, it's got only like a 300-meter transmitter, so it only broadcasts just within the college. So that there's no one really that's able to listen to it locally. But
Well, that's not true. Like,
it's still. I
it
mean,
reaches well in.
It reaches well in, but that's not saying much, dude. Like, with the podcast,
Sure, just like play down our audience.
I just,
but with podcasting, it's more. We have more of a
Web
reach.
friend, yeah.
Exactly.
Or we have listeners that are local that can't listen to our show
Yeah.
because they're in class or they're driving
Yeah.
or whatever.
I mean,
they download the podcast.
We just checked our feed this morning and our stats, and we had someone that was listening in from Vietnam. I mean, like
in the UK.
Yeah.
I mean, I never thought I'd be popular over there.
I just want to go back to the original question, which is commercial radio, commercial entities getting into podcasting going to damage podcasting in some ways? Well, I think that what I would say is, did commercial entities getting into the web damage the web? I mean, you could argue. I actually don't think it did, because you know what? We're all here, and we're all having a conversation that's based on web and internet technologies. There's brands and there's other things happening. That's another part of the conversation. If we want to engage that, we can. If we don't, we don't.
Yeah, but we're the underground. We're the underground. That's the thing, don't you think? Like don't you feel the pressure? Like as big corporate world gets more into the web, and if podcasting becomes all about money, the people that podcast for fun and everything will feel, they'll just have less.
Okay, but this is a larger point. But there's no avenue in the world where money doesn't talk.
Right.
So it's not like we can keep it. Sort of if it has value, the money will come in, and the money will change the equation. That's a good thing, because if it had no value and we're all sitting here talking, to the 10 people in this room, well, you do, right? I mean, you can be underground forever, to the 10 people that you know. But once it has value, the money can't help but come in. Well, when the money comes in, then the professionals come in, and then I see it as good, because it's the natural evolution. Now, if there's a whole other question of is capitalism good or bad? Is sort of the bigger question. But
Yeah,
I don't think we have time
we won't
for
go
that.
there.
That's the thing.
We won't go there.
Yeah,
Heather?
that's the whole thing too.
We'll take...
For people that get the people that get money or get paid to podcast, some people think that they're selling out. But as far as podcasters,
It makes it better.
It makes it better because they're able to afford to be able to maybe get better equipment. They're able to spend more time,
Or maybe, do like other kinds of content.
Exactly, they feel validated enough to be able to I can do this and be able to make a living out of it.
So I'm going to take a comment from Heather, then I'm going to take Hugh, then Brad.
Well, you can ask, did TV streaming their shows after the fact on the web kill TV? No. Does radio stations streaming their shows after the fact, or even during the fact, kill the radio? No. Does the radio station podcasting their show after the fact kill the radio station? No, it's completely different. It's the people that want to listen to live radio are in their car, turning it on, listening to it. They're in the office, turning it on, listening to it. They're not the same people downloading a specific podcast because they want that content, or they want that particular interview, or they want something that radio's not offering them. You take the radio and you podcast it after the fact, that doesn't change the content. So, no, it won't.
It changes the consumption, changes the consumer.
It changes, yeah.
Hugh?
Oh, sorry, Brian. Yeah.
Did I say
You
Hugh?
said Hugh.
I'm calling you Hugh?
That's all right.
Why am I calling you Hugh?
No idea.
Look at you, could you change it to that? Hi, you.
I could, well, I'll play it Hugh now.
We'll just call it.
My name's Ryan, and I've got
Sorry, Ryan.
I have a podcast about sustainability and other things, but an extension of that, if you go to greenmajority.ca, but not right now because DreamHost is crapping out. I work with a radio program on CIUT, and so we're actually redistributing, so after the fact, that audio. But there was a comment about the feedback mechanism, and I think it's entirely possible for that to exist. So we're reading emails and user feedback, and we've got the call number in operation now as well, and it's very much like the podcast. If you can't tune in on that, that's what I like about it, is the asynchronous aspect of the communication, right? If you can't be in the range of CIUT transmitters from 10 to 11 on Friday morning, and I'm actually not, I moved out of the city, so I actually filed my weekly commentary from well beyond the CIUT transmitters. It's there and it's accessible, and it's now starting to grow with people across the country, which I think is really cool too, because it's not necessarily a locally geographically.
Any comments from the panel on that? No? Yes?
Well, yeah, actually, like our show, like when we originally started, when I came with the idea to start the show, it was really I wanted to have podcasting in mind. So our show is kind of based on the fact that it is a podcast, except that we're able to transmit on the radio. And unfortunately, with those radio stations that kind of just prepackage their morning shows or whichever, it's only really interactive for the people that are tuning in live. Whereas if they would take the stance, okay, this is going to be podcast later, maybe you have a little bit more interactivity with that. It helps build their audience and helps feel more of a personal connection with people that are tuning in live and people that are tuning in through the RSS feed.
Yeah. But you'll always have that extra, that excitement about live media that you just can't duplicate with recorded audio.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if you're a
The fact
musician,
that you can call up and say, hey, how's it going, and have that conversation live on the radio.
Absolutely.
yeah, and as a musician, the difference between making a record and doing a concert, I mean, they're night and day, right? So,
I have the new Sting record, but I'm going to watch the concert tomorrow, even though it's the same song.
And if he was playing here, you'd go see him.
And I am.
It's the instant gratification that people love about live stuff, is because you can get instant feedback, and that's what I love about doing our show live on the radio.
Yeah, because like we can change it up as much as we want. We can podcast it. It's done.
Brad?
I just wanted to say that there was a comment about the professionals moving into radio. Actually, I think something else is happening. The professionals are sitting at this panel right here. I think what happened is there'll be a generational change with both radio, the way it's operated historically, with the people that move into it. And I go to a number of broadcasting conferences, and 5 years ago I was at one, and someone came in and was talking about how radio is dead. And what they mentioned was they had no young people coming into it. They had no minor leagues. They had nothing. And they go around looking for talent. Where are they getting the talent? What's happening is podcasting and the people involved in it are developing that next generation of talent.
Because podcasting is helping us get into radio, and we want to be professional broadcasters. I came to Niagara College to become a television tech. Like I worked for Rogers Television up in Allentown as a volunteer, and I thought, oh, TV will be cool. And then I came to school and discovered podcasting, and well, here I am now. I'm going into radio / podcast.
But Brad, you're right on, and it's exactly the same phenomenon that's happened in the music industry, is that now, I can get into a whole thing about this, and Tim should talk about this too, but the rap on major labels now is that they don't develop artists. But their feedback to that is, well, we don't have to. You're all out there making your own records at home, and when you're good enough, we'll sign you. Or if you want us to be signed, we'll sign you. But that's it's kind of the same thing with podcasting. It's kind of it's the new farm system for big media, right?
Yeah.
And big media is changing. So there's stuff. The guys that you have down here doing Spirit and doing podcasting at Ryerson, engaging in those new media, they're going to go to Chum and know more than those people do about the media that they're going to have to do in now, 2 years or whatever.
So we have a question here in the front, and what's your name again? Mark. Mark? Yeah, so I don't rename you, I just had to double check.
My name's Misha. I'm not sure if I have a question. I'm just sort of trying to put my finger on something here. Bill said something, Heather said something that's sort of resonating with me, but this live versus not live versus delayed, spatial, spatial, there's a time and space thing happening here.
The time-space continuum.
And you're screwing it up, right? And you have
Back to the Future, right?
So, but Bill's talking about something which is important to me, and I'm not sure if anybody's disagreeing with it, but it just resonated strong for me. It's like the personal interaction, right? That's, to me, as a newbie, I've heard like that many podcasts in my life, so I'm fresh, right? I'm give you a kind of a, perhaps an unjaded point of view or unexperienced point of view.
Untainted.
Untainted. Kind of You're
virginal. That's my favorite word.
So,
Yes.
so that to me is the most obvious thing. The other thing from hearing these 5 podcasts is that they sound to me more like radio than I expected, with an intro and an extra. I hadn't expected that at all. I thought it would just be audio information. Okay? But there is obviously an attempt to make it sound like radio. I don't know. I'm just commenting out loud here. But the other thing, what you said, Heather, about live, it struck me is that when you listen to live radio, you're having a shared experience in the here and now. It is here within the broadcast range, and now within the now it's live. And that is a different qualitative experience, I think, than, oh, I think I will now go and listen to that audio experience at my choosing, right? I got a new computer the other day that apparently it allows me to record video, or record TV shows. I don't even watch TV. The idea of recording TV shows is bizarre. But the idea of displacing things from the live kind of mode is still very foreign to me. So these are just sort of random comments. I don't want to pick up anything.
And
the
you know what?
live thing is a shared experience in the here and now. And
Yeah.
that to me is a really vital kind of thing.
Yeah, it can't be
How does podcasting deal with that? I don't
Well, I mean, there's different ways that you can interact with your audience with a podcast. People have mentioned blogs and forums and having people email you and that kind of thing. So you can pick that up. I actually have one podcast where the portion of it where I record it is on a teleseminar line. So I actually have a live audience asking questions live as I interview someone live, then the recording is a podcast. So there's different ways to do and then you've got that live phenomenon and you've got the on-demand. Because on-demand is great too.
Well, and I was going to say, how does it deal with it? Well, it doesn't, because it isn't. I mean, like, how does a book deal with the fact that it's not in real time? It
Well,
doesn't, no, but it doesn't, and
I'm reading.
it doesn't, and it shouldn't. It's for something different. Podcasting is for something different than live radio. CDs are for something different than live music.
Right.
So I think that, to me, that's the ultimate thing, is the media, again, it's back to media as a message to me. It's for what it's for. The on-demand aspect of it, the other things are the strengths. The weaknesses are it doesn't have that live engagement, but everything finds its place, I think.
I think the on-demand component of podcasting is the single greatest strength it has to the advertising community, because it's serialized subscription media that somebody is opted in to get, weekly, daily, monthly. That's very, very attractive to an advertiser. Other issues are negatives, but the fact that I know that you've asked for that relationship.
That audience is committed.
Yeah.
And it's so niche, sort of.
It's the same. Like it's the same with TV. I mean, if you're not able to watch it live, you can easily now with TiVo it, and you can be able to watch it on it's time shift. You can watch it on your own time, and that's one of the things I love about podcasting is that I go to school. It takes me about an hour and a half to be able to get to school on a bus. Yeah, I know, sucks to be me. But I use that's why I love having my iPod with podcasts. I literally use it every single day, and I take that time and I'm able to listen to it. So to me, it would be great to listen to one of those shows live, like say for instance Net at Night with Amber McCarthy and Leo Laporte. I would love to be able to listen to it live. I just don't get a chance to. But the fact is that I'm still listening to the show. And I can still interact with them if I wanted to. To me, it kind of takes over the place of something live that I still have that personal connection if I was.
So we're going to take this last comment from Mark, but I just want to, and then wrap up since we're nearing the top of the hour. One of the things I want to mention is that along this conversation, I was talking to Christopher Penn, who's the host of the Financial Aid podcast. And he was saying that one of the things he loves about podcasting is its longevity in terms of the archived episodes. And he said there's one episode that he has from December 13th, 2005 that is still listened to and is one of the most downloaded episodes that he has. And again, from an advertising standpoint, that's something that is kind of, foreign in a sense, but it's one of the sellable features of why podcasting is so much more powerful.
Because you can earn your listenership from the beginning no matter where.
Right.
That's right.
Exactly, yeah.
So Mark first, and then Natalie.
I think, though, the thing to keep in mind also is we don't want to get too caught up in the mode of distribution. I always say this with indie versus major. I really don't care how it's distributed. The main thing that's great about podcasting is it takes people that are passionate about whatever form of music it is, and they're also a filter. Good radio is great radio when the person is passionate and is a filter and is allowing, kind of telling you about, this is really great and I personally think this, and you appreciate their opinion because you trust them. Whether they're a DJ on commercial radio, non-commercial, or a podcast, really in the end it doesn't matter because it's about content. And maybe commercial radio is going a bit away from content and spending too much time with advertising, whereas non-commercial and podcasts are more concerned with content. So as long as they're concerned with content, I think eventually the money will flow in if that's what it has to be, but it's the passion and it's the content that's what people are tuning into the podcast for.
Right. Awesome. All right, so I'm going to ask, Natalie, sorry.
Yeah, the only one comment I wanted to make that sort of really struck me about this is I've had a big issue whenever you're talking about Creative Commons and things, putting stuff out there, copyright issues. And one of the things is that I wouldn't have a problem with Creative Commons in a podcast because you can't pretend it's you. It's me, it's my voice, it's the people that I'm interviewing, and you can I'm happy for you to have to distribute it, as opposed to the printed text or page where you can cut and paste it and pretend that you wrote it. And I mean, somebody could copy what I said, but that's a whole other thing. But actually taking that physical content and putting it somewhere else, don't know.
It's fine as long as you're giving it away, but once you start selling it, it becomes a problem.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
For some people, it may or may not for you,
No, I'm
but it
just
certainly
saying-
is for some people. And that's,
Yeah,
I totally agree with
I
what you're
want
saying.
to see the monetizing one and find out more about monetizing,
Right.
because I know there's a lot of people talking about, the making money versus not making money, but we have to accept the fact that for a lot of really high production value things, there's a lot of interview time and work that goes into traveling to go to places and look things up and do research. I'm sorry, but people have to pay for those things. We have to put food on the table. So sometimes
Absolutely.
the commercial systems are going to have to continue to exist. Maybe podcasting will drive them to provide more content and more targeted advertising,
All right.
rather than the broadcast.
Thank you, Natalie. Okay, so I've got my stopwatch out. You got 30 seconds to sum up, panel, with your last few points. Hang on, where is it?
Like 30 seconds
each.
30 seconds each.
I feel like 24.
Hang on, stopwatch. Okay, hang on. This thing is very sensitive.
But much like me.
If that's a pickup line, it works.
Wow.
You're going to go a long way, kid.
Wow.
All right,
Okay, ready?
She's going to spend all our time.
30 seconds, starting with Bill.
So what I'd encourage the podcaster community to do is focus on building your audience, and you're going to build your audience by producing great content. And then the advertisers will come.
I think my point of this is I think the integration between podcasting and radio is great, and honestly, it drives the radio stations to become better. And I don't know. I think the integration is going to come. I think you're going to see more radio become more like podcasting, much like was mentioned by Mark. I think it was. Yeah. It's going to be like that, and you're going to see the content improve. You're going to see radio come back. I think really large.
Yeah. I love the fact what Mark said about passion is I love a quote that David Lawrence says: "If you're interested, you'll be interesting." So that's what podcasters need to learn is if you're passionate about something, people will tune in and listen and will love your show. And it doesn't matter if it's on radio, if it's on podcasting. It will. If you're passionate about it, that's all that matters.
We've heard some things like podcast trying to sound like radio trying to be like podcast. I think it's more like a symbiotic relationship. Podcasts are using the benefits of radio and the style of radio. Radio's using the delivery method of podcasts. So it's all working together. Recorded media will never replace something like breaking news. You can't do it. But the question is not, is the medium the message or is the content the message?
And to that I'd say the content is, of course, the message, but how you communicate that content. Early TV looked like theater with a camera.
Yeah.
The first movies looked like they didn't know what close-ups were. Media affects each other, and you know what? Media doesn't kill other media because we still have theaters and we still have live theater, even though you can get DVDs at home, right? Even though you can get a TV. Media impacts other media and it changes other media, and of course, initially, stuff's going to sound like radio because that's our model, but it's going to evolve into something else. How's it going to evolve? We don't know.
I would just say whether it's radio or podcasting, I encourage you to always be communicative and send an email to people, say, hey, I'm listening, I like what you're doing, keep it up. And for all you that came, I have free CDs that are pod safe and stickers. So if you have a show,
I want stickers. That's the agenda.
Awesome way to end the panel.
You win.
Thank you, everyone. Lunch is downstairs.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, guys.
Greg.